Welcome. Find a comfortable position and gently close your eyes. Take a deep breath in, hold for a moment, and then exhale slowly, letting go of any tension in your body. With each breath, feel yourself becoming more relaxed, letting go of the stress of the day. Start by relaxing your toes, then move up through your feet, legs, hips, and torso, feeling your body soften and become heavier with each exhale. Let your shoulders, arms, and neck release all tightness and relax your face, jaw, and forehead. Now imagine yourself in a peaceful garden surrounded by calm nature sounds. As you breathe deeply and feel a sense of deep tranquility, repeat quietly to yourself, I am safe, I am calm, I am at peace. With each breath, let go of anything you don't need, knowing that your body is ready to rest and your mind is calm. Let your body sink into the bed, completely supported, and allow yourself to drift into peaceful sleep. Good night. Once upon a time, there was a princess named Katerina. She was the most beautiful princess in all the lands, and every prince alive wanted her hand in marriage, because she was not only beautiful, but intelligent and kind as well. But what no man knew was that she could not speak at all. She had been kidnapped at the age of 4, and had not spoken since her return. The resident fairy godmother of the castle said that it would take her one true love to get her to speak again, and her parents despaired because they knew that for Katerina, to find her one true love could take a lifetime. A prince named Lancifer was practicing his swordplay in a kingdom nearly a week's ride away when a messenger burst into the courtyard, calling for him. Lancifer, Lancifer, my lord prince, your parents call you to the throne room, he cried, dropping to one knee before the prince. This particular messenger had a tendency to overreact, and Prince Lancifer calmly sheathed his sword, replacing it where he got it from the sword rack. A servant wheeled the rack inside a storage room as Prince Lancifer followed the messenger to the throne room. Lancifer, it is time for you to find a wife, said the king. Ella has been nagging me about when you'll finally settle down and bring her grandchildren. You know how your mother wants grandchildren. No sooner than the word grandchildren had escaped from his mouth than the throne room doors burst open again. Jeremy, I heard every last word of that. I have not been nagging you, merely suggesting that you finally bring our son up here and tell him he must find a wife. As I see you have done so, I have brought you some cakes as a reward. She snapped her fingers, and a maid brought forth a platter with cookies and cakes upon it. This must last you the rest of the day, my love. She smiled and kissed the king. Lancifer, darling, I have heard that the Princess Katerina of Teroth is looking for a husband. I believe it is proper these days for suitors to call upon the female. And so tomorrow you are leaving for Terat City, capital of Teroth. You will behave respectably. Your behavior reflects upon your father and your country. Lancifer bowed his head. Yes, mother. Is she a decent woman? You know I will not marry a girl whose only concern is when her next dress arrives. She is beautiful and kind, they say, and her parents are quite pleasant. You will enjoy yourself, I am sure. Ella waved her hand. You're dismissed. Go pack, dear. You leave early tomorrow morning. Prince Lancifer left and climbed the north tower steps to his room at the top, grumbling about his mother the entire way. He threw a month's worth of clothes into a trunk and managed to fit a lute and 3 bottles of shampoo in as well. He left at dawn the next morning and travelled by carriage for the better part of a week before reaching Terat City and the front gate of the castle of Teroth. I am Lancifer of Reel, calling for Katerina of Teroth. He announced his presence to the castle guards, and they checked the seals on the 12 pieces of parchment his parents had packed in his road bag, knowing he'd need them to declare his suit for the lovely princess. The head guards saluted him as his carriage passed through the gates, and the king and queen of Teroth warmly welcomed him into their castle. Like home, he was put into rooms in the north tower, but here he was on the bottom floor rather than the top. It was nice, he mused, not having to climb up 1,000 stairs when he was already exhausted. He collapsed on the bed and slept till dinner. At dinner, Lancifer sat across from the lovely Katerina and nervously smiled at her when he wasn't looking down at his plate. He made small talk with the king and queen, noticing the princess's strange absence from the conversation. "Katerina, I am sure your voice is as lovely as the rest of you. Why, then, do you not speak?" The queen stepped in and answered for her daughter. "She has not spoken since she was stolen away as a child. We found her, but her voice has been lost to the threads of time. However, we have heard that she may regain her use of it, if she is to meet and marry her one true love. He alone may coax her voice from her." Lancifer smiled. "'Tis a good thing, then, milady. I cannot stand a woman who has nothing better to do than talk my ear off. Katerina, would you like to go stargazing down on the river in 2 nights' time? Though the night sky cannot compare to your beauty, I would like nothing more than to gaze upon it with you beside me." She blushed and nodded, averting her gaze from the handsome prince. "Take her nursemaid as a chaperone," the queen said. "It will be most improper if you do not." "I would do nothing less," Lancifer said, deferring to the proper woman. "If you and the king would like to accompany us, you may. I think a picnic beneath the stars would be most wonderful. We could have small sweets and light drinks, I think. The stars come out far too late for a hearty dinner. We shall consider your offer and inform you tomorrow night." The queen smiled. "Thank you for your thoughtfulness. It is late now, and I'm afraid we must go to bed. Good night, Prince Lancifer. Katerina, to bed with you." Lancifer waved at the princess as she followed her parents to their rooms, and he made his way back to the first floor of the north tower, where he fell asleep as soon as his head touched his pillow. The next morning he joined the Teroth royal family for breakfast, and greeted Katerina with a kiss on the back of her hand and a twinkle in his eye. "You are lovely, my dear lady. There are not words to describe to what extent, but know that you are the most beautiful creature I've ever laid eyes on." Katerina blushed and bowed her head as Lancifer rose from a bent knee. After they ate breakfast, he demonstrated his skill with sword and horse, and they dined on sandwiches in the gardens at lunch. Lancifer found he was quickly warming up to the quiet princess, and he took her hand as they wandered the gardens. She smiled sunnily at him, and he returned her smile. She led him through her favourite parts, and he requested to see the greenhouse full of the small trees her land was known for. As she accompanied Lancifer through the greenhouse, he told her stories of his home and childhood. She reacted wonderfully, smiling in all the right places and nearly crying when the moment called for it. They arrived to dinner together, her hair still messed from when they lay on their backs atop a hill, watching clouds pass by, and his hands still dirty from helping a gardener prune a tree. The next morning Lancifer met Katerina again, and she bid him good morning. He was shocked. She wasn't supposed to talk. Her voice was hoarse and clearly rusty from lack of use, but still beautiful, he thought. "Will you accompany me to the music hall today?" she asked. "I would like to play for you." He nodded, ecstatic that she'd begun to talk again. She sat down in front of the piano, and beautiful music flowed forth from her fingertips. She poured her heart into the music, and Lancifer was overwhelmed with the love she projected through the notes at him. As the final notes faded from the air, he whispered, "I love you," and she returned in kind, "And I love you." That night they gazed at stars and cuddled close on a blanket by the river, snacking on cookies and cakes, and every year they would take a trip to the river on the same day to gaze at the stars that night. For years they lived happily ever after, and their kingdoms grew strong together. The end. On the edge of a quaint little village lay a forest, blanketed in soft hues of emerald and gold. It was no ordinary forest. Villagers called it the Whispering Forest because when the wind moved through its towering trees, it seemed as though they were whispering secrets from ancient times. Many who visited the forest claimed to leave with their hearts lighter and minds at ease. One cool evening, a young traveller named Hélène found herself at the forest's edge. She had wandered far that day, her pack heavy with trinkets and a heart full of restless thoughts. The village folk had spoken of the forest's calming nature, and Hélène, seeking solace, decided to venture inside. As soon as she stepped under the canopy, a gentle breeze greeted her, carrying the soft rustle of leaves. The air was cooler here, tinged with the scent of pine and earth. The whispers began, faint at first like the hum of a distant stream. She paused, her steps slowing, and closed her eyes. It wasn't frightening, it felt welcoming, as if the forest itself was alive, eager to share its stories. Ellen walked further, her boots crunching softly on the mossy path. Every now and then she passed trees with bark as smooth as silk, their trunks glowing faintly in the fading light. Curious, she reached out to touch one, feeling its warmth beneath her fingers. For a brief moment she thought she heard a melody, sweet and soothing, like a lullaby carried on the wind. The path eventually led to a small clearing, bathed in silver moonlight. In the center stood a serene pond, its surface so still it resembled polished glass. Surrounding the pond were luminous flowers, their petals glowing softly in shades of lavender and blue. Ellen knelt by the water, her reflection gazing back at her with a serenity she hadn't felt in years. Feeling drowsy, she lay down on the soft grass by the pond, her pack resting beside her. The whispers seemed to grow clearer now, their tones melodic and kind. She heard fragments of words, tales of faraway lands, of stars and dreams and laughter. The forest seemed to cradle her thoughts, weaving them into the whispers, as if to lighten her burden. As she lay there, a soft mist began to rise from the pond, curling around her like a protective blanket. Her eyelids grew heavier, and the whispers turned into gentle murmurs, soothing and rhythmic, like the ebb and flow of the tide. The last thing she remembered was the faint glow of the flowers and the feeling of absolute peace. When Ellen awoke the next morning, the forest was quiet. Sunlight streamed through the trees, casting golden rays onto the forest floor. She felt different, lighter, as if a weight she hadn't realized she was carrying had been lifted. She stood, brushed off her cloak, and smiled. The forest had given her something she hadn't sought, but deeply needed, rest and renewal. As she made her way back to the village, the whispers lingered in her memory like the remnants of a dream. Ellen knew she would return to the Whispering Forest, not out of need, but out of gratitude for its quiet magic and gentle embrace. And so the forest remained, waiting for the next weary traveler, its whispers ready to lull them into peace. Once upon a time, in a quiet village nestled between rolling hills and shimmering lakes, there lived a peculiar clockmaker named Elwin. His workshop was a marvel, filled with ticking and tocking creations of every shape and size. But Elwin's most prized possession wasn't a clock, it was a compass, unlike any other in the world. This compass didn't point north, south, east, or west. Instead, it pointed to the stars. When its golden needle spun, it aligned itself with constellations, guiding those who followed it toward their heart's deepest desires. Yet no one knew exactly how it worked, not even Elwin. One starry night, a knock sounded at Elwyn's door. He opened it to find a young girl, her cheeks flushed from the cold, clutching a worn leather satchel. "Please," she said, "I need your help. My name is Lila, and my brother is lost. The villagers say you have a compass that can guide people to what they seek most. Can it find him?" Elwyn hesitated. The compass was unpredictable, and its journeys often required more courage than one might expect. But Lila's eyes shone with determination, and Elwyn couldn't refuse her. He handed her the compass, which glimmered faintly under the moonlight. "Follow where it leads," he said. "But remember, the path to your desire may not be straight, and it may not be easy." Lila nodded, and with a grateful smile, she set off. The compass needle spun wildly before settling on a direction that led her deep into the forest. The trees whispered as she passed, their branches forming intricate patterns against the sky. Though the forest was dark, the compass glowed faintly, illuminating her path. After hours of walking, Lila reached a clearing where she found an ancient stone archway. The compass pointed directly through it. Taking a deep breath, she stepped inside. On the other side, the world was unlike anything Lila had ever seen. The ground sparkled as if dusted with stars, and the air hummed with music. A tall, cloaked figure awaited her, holding a lantern that emitted a gentle, golden light. "You seek your brother," the figure said, its voice resonating like a melody. "But first you must prove your courage, your kindness, and your trust." The figure gestured to 3 paths. On the first, a fierce wind howled, threatening to sweep away anything in its path. On the second, a sleeping dragon lay coiled around a treasure chest. The third path was shrouded in mist, so thick it seemed impenetrable. Lila's heart raced, but she tightened her grip on the compass. The needle pointed toward the path of mist. "I trust the compass," she said aloud, stepping forward. The mist enveloped her, cool and damp, obscuring everything but the faint glow of the compass. She walked blindly, feeling her way until she heard a soft cry. Following the sound, she emerged into a clearing where a boy sat, his face streaked with tears. "Eli!" she cried, rushing to embrace her brother. He looked up, surprised but overjoyed. "Lila, how did you find me?" She held up the compass. "With a little help." But when she looked at it again, the needle was spinning wildly before finally coming to rest, pointing back the way they came. Together they retraced her steps until they found the cloaked figure once more. "You have proven yourself," it said. "Your courage led you through uncertainty. Your kindness reunited you with your brother, and your trust in the unknown brought you here. The compass has served its purpose." The figure handed Lila the lantern, which now glowed brighter than ever. "This will guide you home." When Lila and Eli returned to the village, Elwyn was waiting outside his workshop. He smiled as he saw the lantern in Lila's hands. "The compass always knows," he said. Lila offered to return it, but Elwyn shook his head. "It chooses its journeys. Keep it for now. Someday it may guide you again." From that day forward, Lila and Eli treasured the compass and the lantern. They knew their adventures weren't over, but they also knew that whatever they faced, they had the tools and each other to find their way. And so, under a canopy of stars, their story began anew. The ocean stretched endlessly beneath a silver sky, its waves brushing against the rocky shore like a soothing heartbeat. Perched atop a solitary cliff was the Whitehaven Lighthouse, its beacon faithfully casting light across the dark waters. For decades it had stood as a guardian for wayward sailors, a steadfast presence in an ever-changing world. The lighthouse keeper, Mr. Elias Gray, had tended the beacon for nearly 20 years. A man of few words but endless thoughts, Elias lived a quiet life within the lighthouse walls, his days marked by the rhythm of the sea and the ritual of lighting the beacon at dusk. On this particular evening, the air was unusually still, as though the world itself was holding its breath. Elias sat in his favourite armchair by the window, a steaming cup of tea in hand. His journal lay open on the small wooden table beside him. It was an old habit of his, writing reflections at the end of each day, not for anyone else to read, but to anchor himself in the moment. He dipped his pen into the inkwell, the faint scratch of nib on paper breaking the serene silence. The sea was calm today, a rare and welcome respite from the storm 2 nights ago. A lone gull circled the cliffs this morning, its cries a melancholic melody against the whisper of the waves. There is a beauty to solitude, though it often arrives hand in hand with longing. Elias paused, gazing out the window. The horizon was a soft blur of twilight hues, lavender, rose, and a hint of gold. The sky seemed to melt into the sea, and for a moment he felt as though he were floating in a boundless dream. His thoughts drifted back to the letter he had received months ago, now tucked away in a drawer. It was from an old friend, someone who had once shared his love for the sea but had long since traded it for the bustle of city life. The letter spoke of opportunities, of adventures awaiting him, if he would only leave the lighthouse behind. Yet here he remained. He rose from his chair and climbed the narrow staircase to the beacon room. The lens, polished to a gleam, stood ready for its nightly duty. As he lit the lamp and set the mechanism turning, the familiar hum of the light's rotation filled the room. It was a comforting sound, like the ticking of an old clock, steady and unyielding. Outside, the first stars began to appear, their faint light dancing on the rippling waves. Elias leaned against the railing of the balcony, breathing in the cool, salty air. The world felt infinite in that moment, the kind of vastness that made one feel both insignificant and deeply connected to something greater. As the beacon swept its light across the sea, Elias imagined it touching distant ships and faraway shores. He wondered about the lives it safeguarded, the stories of those who glimpsed its glow on a foggy night. Did they ever wonder about the man behind the light? Returning to his journal, Elias wrote, "The sea has the way of holding secrets, much like this lighthouse. It bears witness to countless lives, yet reveals so little. Perhaps that is why I am drawn to it. There is solace in mystery, a quiet understanding that not everything needs to be known to be felt." His pen lingered on the page. The wind had picked up now, rustling the leaves of the solitary tree that clung to the edge of the cliff. The lighthouse seemed to sigh, its walls creaking softly in the breeze. Elias closed his journal and extinguished the lantern by his chair. As he prepared for bed, the lighthouse continued its ceaseless vigil, its beams slicing through the dark with unerring precision. Elias lay beneath a heavy woolen blanket, the rhythmic crash of the waves below lulling him towards sleep. His thoughts, like the tide, ebbed and flowed. He saw fragments of memories, storms weathered, letters left unanswered, and moments of profound stillness under starlit skies. And as the lighthouse stood watch, Elias finally surrendered to the night, drifting into dreams as vast and timeless as the sea. The Whitehaven lighthouse remained steadfast, its light a silent promise in the dark, guarding not only the lives of sailors, but the quiet dreams of the man who had devoted his life to its glow. The air was cool and crisp, carrying the faint aroma of pine and earth. A small fire crackled in the center of the campsite, its amber glow dancing on the faces of 3 friends, Nora, Jules, and Graham, They had been planning this weekend escape for months, a break from their fast-paced city lives to reconnect with nature and perhaps with themselves. Their tent stood a few paces away, silhouetted against the backdrop of Ember Lake. The lake got its name from the way the water mirrored the sky at sunset, glowing like smouldering embers. By night, the lake transformed into a dark, glassy mirror, reflecting a tapestry of stars that stretched endlessly above them. Jules leaned back in a foldable chair, poking at the fire with a long stick. Sparks spiraled upward like fireflies before fading into the darkness. "This is perfect," he said, his voice soft, almost reverent. Nora, sitting cross-legged on a blanket, nodded. "I didn't realize how much I needed this until now." She pulled her sweater tighter around her shoulders and looked toward the lake, her thoughts wandering. Graham, ever the practical one, checked the lanterns and then sat down beside Nora. "Tomorrow's hike is going to be amazing," he said. The trail to the summit is supposed to have a panoramic view of the entire valley. But none of them were thinking about tomorrow. The moment was too still, too peaceful to leave behind. The fire hissed as Jules tossed another log into the flames. "Do you think it's true what they say about this place?" he asked, his voice laced with curiosity. Nora raised an eyebrow. "What are you talking about now?" "The old legend," Jules said, leaning forward. "The one about the lake granting wishes. They say that if you sit quietly by the water and make a wish, the lake listens." Graham scoffed. "And then what? Your wish just comes true." "Maybe," Jules said with a shrug. "Or maybe it's just a story to get people to come here. Either way, it's nice to think about, isn't it? A lake that listens." Nora glanced at the lake again, its surface like black silk under the starlight. "It does feel magical," she admitted. For a while they sat in companionable silence, the fire the only sound between them. The vastness of the night sky made the world feel both infinite and intimate, as though time had slowed just for them. "I'm going to test it," Jules announced suddenly, standing up. "Test what?" Graham asked. "The wish thing." Jules grinned and walked toward the lake, leaving the warmth of the fire behind. He crouched at the water's edge, the cool air nipping at his cheeks. For a moment he hesitated, then whispered something too quiet for the others to hear. When he returned, Nora smirked. "So, did the lake answer back?" "Not yet," Jules said with mock solemnity. "But I have a feeling it's listening." They laughed, and the tension of the day seemed to dissolve completely. One by one, the friends began to wind down. Graham was the first to retreat into the tent, muttering something about an early start. Nora stayed by the fire for a while longer, lost in her thoughts. When she finally stood to join the others, she glanced at the lake one last time and whispered her own wish into the night. By the time the fire had burned down to glowing embers, the campsite was quiet. Inside the tent, the three friends lay cocooned in their sleeping bags. The rhythmic chirping of crickets and the occasional hoot of an owl filled the silence, lulling them into a deep, dreamless sleep. Nora woke in the middle of the night, the faintest sound pulling her from her slumber. She unzipped the tent flap quietly and stepped outside. The world was bathed in a silvery glow, the full moon hanging low over the lake. She walked toward the water, drawn by something she couldn't quite name. The lake was impossibly still, its surface reflecting the sky so perfectly that it was hard to tell where one ended and the other began. As she knelt by the shore, a soft ripple broke the surface, spreading outward in perfect circles. Nora froze, her breath catching. There was no wind, no movement, yet the lake had stirred. She thought of her wish, the quiet words she had whispered into the darkness earlier that evening. It was a simple wish, born not of greed but of hope, and in that moment she felt a strange sense of peace, as though the lake had acknowledged her, even if it didn't grant her wish outright. The next morning, the three friends packed up their campsite, their spirits lighter than when they had arrived. They didn't talk about the wishes they had made or the strange sense of connection they had felt by the lake. Some things didn't need to be spoken aloud to be understood. As they hiked the trail toward the summit, the sun rose higher in the sky, painting the world in warm hues, and though they didn't know it yet, each of their lives would be touched in small but meaningful ways in the days and weeks to come. A kind word from a stranger, an unexpected opportunity, or a moment of clarity that led them towards something they'd long sought. Ember Lake remained behind, its surface calm and quiet once more, holding the whispered wishes of those who visited. And as the friends disappeared into the forest, the lake waited, patient and eternal, for the next soul in need of its quiet magic. In the heart of the serene countryside, where rolling hills stretched endlessly under the gentle glow of moonlight, there stood a small, centuries-old inn named the Whispering Willows. Travelers spoke of the inn as a haven of tranquility, a place where restless souls found solace and weary minds rediscovered calm. Tonight, as the world outside lay cloaked in stillness, the inn prepared to weave its magic once more. Amelia, the innkeeper, had an air of timeless wisdom about her. Her silver hair cascaded like a waterfall down her back, and her soft melodic voice carried the promise of peaceful dreams. She greeted each guest with a warm smile and a steaming cup of chamomile tea, brewed with herbs she cultivated in the garden behind the inn. The tea, she always said, was infused with whispers of the willows themselves, soothing even the most troubled hearts. On this particular evening, the inn welcomed a small group of guests, each drawn to its promise of rest. Among them was Samuel, a writer struggling to finish a novel, Elena, an artist searching for inspiration, and Marcus, a businessman seeking an escape from the relentless pace of city life. Each carried their burdens like invisible cloaks, weighing them down as they stepped into the cozy warmth of the inn. The common room was a sanctuary of comfort, adorned with shelves of weathered books, flickering candles, and the soft hum of an ancient gramophone playing a lullaby-like tune. A crackling fire danced in the hearth, its golden light casting shadows that seemed to tell stories of their own. The scent of lavender and vanilla lingered in the air, wrapping the guests in an embrace of serenity. Amelia invited the guests to sit by the fire and offered them slices of freshly baked honey cake. As they settled into the plush armchairs, she began to share the legend of the Whispering Willows. Long ago, she began, her voice a gentle murmur. This land was home to a grove of ancient willow trees. They were said to be enchanted, their branches whispering secrets to those who sought peace. People traveled from far and wide to sit beneath their boughs and listen. It is said that the willows could hear the dreams of the weary and send them whispers of hope and clarity. The guests listened, captivated by Amelia's tale. Outside, the wind stirred, and the sound of rustling leaves seemed to echo her words. Samuel imagined the willows whispering the ending to his novel. Elena saw the image of a willow tree taking shape on a blank canvas in her mind. Marcus felt a sense of lightness, as though the trees were lifting the weight of his worries. After the story, Amelia led the guests to their rooms. Each chamber was uniquely adorned, with soft linens, a window overlooking the moonlit hills, and a small journal placed on the bedside table. "Write your thoughts," Amelia encouraged them. "The willows may not stand here any more, but their whispers linger in this inn. Perhaps they'll visit you in your dreams." Samuel sat by the window, pen in hand, and let his thoughts spill onto the pages of the journal. Words flowed effortlessly, weaving together scenes and dialogues that had eluded him for months. Elena sketched in her journal, her pencil dancing across the paper, as she brought the willow tree from her mind to life. Marcus wrote down his hopes and fears, feeling a sense of release with each word. As the night deepened, the inn grew quieter. The only sounds were the occasional creak of the wooden beams and the soft sigh of the wind. The guests drifted into slumber, their dreams filled with vivid images of willows swaying under starlit skies. Samuel dreamed of a wise old tree guiding him through a forest, its whispers unraveling the perfect ending for his story. Elena dreamed of painting a masterpiece on a canvas as large as the horizon, each brushstroke guided by the rustling of willow leaves. Marcus dreamed of sitting beneath a willow, its branches shielding him from the chaos of life, leaving him with a profound sense of calm. When morning arrived, the first rays of sunlight painted the hills in hues of gold. The guests gathered in the dining room, their faces aglow with a newfound sense of peace. Samuel spoke of the chapter he had completed. Elena shared her sketches, and Marcus marveled at the clarity he felt about decisions he needed to make. Amelia smiled, knowing the magic of the whispering willows had worked once more. "Carry this calm with you," she said, "and remember, the whispers of the willows are always within you, waiting to be heard." As the guests departed, the inn stood quietly under the morning sun, a place where dreams and whispers intertwined, ready to welcome the next weary soul seeking refuge. And though the willows themselves no longer stood, their spirit lived on, cradling those who dared to listen. Beneath the velvety expanse of the midnight sky, Evelyn sat on the balcony of her remote countryside home, cradling a mug of chamomile tea. The stars above were unusually vivid, painting the heavens in shimmering constellations that seemed to pulse with a life of their own. Tonight felt different. A quiet anticipation hummed in the cool air, making the hairs on the back of her neck stand on end. For years Evelyn had sought solitude in this secluded haven, far from the clamour of city life. A retired astrophysicist, she had always felt a deep connection to the universe, finding solace in its boundless mysteries. Yet nothing in her decades of study could have prepared her for what was about to unfold. As the clock struck midnight, a sudden streak of light pierced the sky, far brighter than any meteor Evelyn had ever seen. It blazed a fiery orange before slowing unnaturally, its descent transforming into a graceful glide. Evelyn's breath caught as it came to rest in the meadow just beyond her garden. Heart pounding, she grabbed her flashlight and ventured out into the cool night. Her slippers sank into the dewy grass as she approached the glowing object. It was no ordinary meteorite. A sleek silver craft the size of a small car rested gently on the ground, its surface pulsating with faint blue light. The air around it crackled with energy, a soft hum resonating in her chest. Before Evelyn could take another step, a hatch on the craft slid open with a whisper. A being emerged, its form humanoid yet distinctly otherworldly. It stood taller than her, its skin a luminous shade of lavender that seemed to shimmer under the starlight. Large almond-shaped eyes glowed with an iridescent hue, and its elongated fingers moved gracefully, as if conducting an invisible symphony. Evelyn froze, torn between awe and fear. The being raised a hand, palm outward, in what she instinctively understood as a gesture of peace, summoning her courage. She stepped closer. "Hello," she called softly, her voice trembling. The being tilted its head, its glowing eyes locking onto hers. Then, as if plucking words from her mind, a melodic voice filled the air. "Greetings, Evelyn." She gasped, You know my name." The being nodded slowly. "We have observed you, your work, your thoughts, your questions about the cosmos. You seek understanding, and so do we. Evelyn's mind raced. "Who are you? Why are you here?" "I am Alaris," it replied. "A traveller from a distant world. I come not with harm, but with curiosity, drawn to the energy of your mind and your connection to the stars." Evelyn's fear began to ebb, replaced by a profound sense of wonder. She had spent her life pondering the possibility of extraterrestrial life, yet standing before this ethereal being felt surreal. "What do you want from me?" Alaris gestured toward the sky. "Your species stands on the brink of great change. The stars hold answers, but they also hold dangers. I seek to share knowledge that may guide you, if you are willing." Evelyn hesitated, her scientific skepticism bubbling to the surface. "Why me? I'm no longer in the field, I'm just a woman who loves the stars." Alaris's gaze softened. "It is precisely your love and humility that make you a suitable bridge between our worlds. Knowledge is not reserved for the few, but shared by those who seek it, with an open heart." The being extended a hand, and Evelyn felt an unspoken invitation. Taking a deep breath, she reached out, her fingers brushing against its cool, radiant skin. In that instant, her mind filled with a cascade of images and sensations. She saw galaxies spiraling in brilliant colors, worlds teeming with life, and technologies that defied comprehension. She felt the interconnectedness of all things, a vast web of existence spanning light years. Tears streamed down her face as the vision faded. "It's beautiful," she whispered. Alaris nodded. "The universe is vast, but it is also fragile. You now carry a fragment of its truth. Use it wisely." Before she could respond, Alaris stepped back toward the craft. The hatch opened, and it turned to her one last time. "Farewell, Evelyn. Perhaps we shall meet again among the stars." With that, the craft rose silently, its glow intensifying as it ascended. Within moments, it disappeared into the night sky, leaving only a faint shimmer in its wake. Evelyn stood in the meadow, her heart brimming with awe and purpose. She didn't know how, but she felt certain that her encounter with Alaris was the beginning of something extraordinary. The stars above seemed closer now, their light a gentle reminder that the universe held endless possibilities, if only one dared to
12:56 a.m. on 4/18. 12:56 a.m. on 4/18.